To the memory of the deceased author, Master W. Shakespeare, by Leonard Digges, and the Rosicrucian-Freemasonic Stratford Monument, commissioned by Francis Bacon. In his poem prefixed to the Shakespeare First Folio, Bacon's inward friend and Rosicrucian Freemasonry brother Leonard Digges made the first known printed reference to the Stratford Shakespeare Monument, wherein he tells us that when time dissolves thy Stratford Monument, the hidden truth will finally be revealed to the world. The Digges family were eminent mathematicians, scientists and astronomers, and as we shall see, the Digges and Bacon families had a long and close relationship that went back generations, and they were in fact kinsmen. It is truly remarkable how little is known about Leonard Digges, a contributor of a verse to the most famous secular publication in English and world literature. Until recently, the entry for Digges in the Dictionary of National Biography by the Shakespeare Authority, Sir Sidney Lee, published in 1888, was the primary source for the known biographical details about his hidden and obscured life. This suspiciously brief biographical account of Leonard Digges served as the first go-to for scholars and students until 2004, when it was succeeded by the brief entry for him in the ODNB. The updated entry for Digges, which had benefited from more than a century of modern scholarship, repeated, as indicated by its accreditation, much of the earlier entry in the DNB, and added a few more minor biographical details, which will be given notice in its appropriate place. Neither the entry for Leonard Digges in the DNB or the ODNB refers to or once mentions Bacon, and likewise for the last 400 years none of the orthodox Bacon editors and biographers mention Leonard Digges, even though Spedding brings up his brother Sir Dudley Digges on a number of occasions in volumes 4, 5 and 7 of his Standards, Letters and Lives. And Professors Jardine and Stewart refer to his father Thomas Digges and his grandfather Leonard Digges and his brother Sir Dudley Digges, but for some reason best known to themselves, Spedding and Jardine and Stewart do not include any notice whatsoever of the poet Leonard Digges, contributor of a verse to the First Folio. The obscured and virtually unknown relationship between the Bacons and Digges went back to the middle of the 16th century, which continued through to the middle of the 17th century with the important poem by Leonard Digges, prefixed to the edition of the Shakespeare poems in 1640. His grandfather, Leonard Digges, after whom he was named, was one of the first generation of English mathematical authors to issue works in the vernacular. However, only 2 of his works were published in his lifetime. According to Fuller, he was the best architect in that age for all manner of buildings, for conveniency, pleasure, state, strength, being excellent at fortifications. These and other interests he shared with his special patron, Nicholas Bacon. His groundbreaking work, entitled A Geometrical Practice, was published posthumously by his son Thomas Digges in 1571. He dedicated the work to Lord Keeper Sir Nicholas Bacon in the fulfilment of the wishes of his father, who had discussed mathematics and the sciences with Bacon, who had served as a very special patron to his father and patron and protector to himself. Opposite the first page of the dedication to Sir Nicholas Bacon is a full-page reproduction of the Bacon family coat of arms with its Latin motto Mediocria Firma, topped with the crest of a boar, a coat of arms inherited by his son Francis Bacon, which appears in various editions of his works. Following the death of his father, from the age of 13, Thomas Digges' upbringing and education fell to his father's close friend, Dr. John Dee. Thomas would later refer to his master and mentor, Dr. Dee, as his second mathematical father, and in turn Dee considered Digges as my most worthy mathematical heir. Through the next 2 decades, Dee and Digges benefited from the patronage of Sir Nicholas Bacon and his brother-in-law, Sir William Cecil, which, in course of time, brought them into close contact with the aspiring scientific genius of the family, Francis Bacon, who even at a young age was then planning a universal reformation of the whole world. On his return to England in March 1579, for a time Bacon resided with the Earl of Leicester, his secret biological father, at Leicester House on the Strand, which was evidently visited by Thomas Digges during the same period. It was at Leicester House that Bacon and Philip Sidney and other inward friends met for discussions about philosophy, literature and science, whose number most probably included Thomas Digges, now working under the patronage of the Earl of Leicester, to whom he dedicated the revised 1579 edition of the military treatise Stratioticus, a dedication curiously sprinkled with some Baconian-like language and phraseology. In 1586, through the direct influence of his patron Leicester, Digges was appointed Muster General of the English forces in the Netherlands, and he in turn defended Leicester's reputation in both a brief report of the military services, 1587, and after the death of his patron in 1588, a brief and true report of the proceedings, in 1590. For this publication, Digges secretly collaborated with Bacon. Printed above the address to the reader stands Bacon's AA headpiece. Nor was this the last of the military publications that Digges and Bacon secretly collaborated on. His military concerns, largely generated from his practical experience, were reflected in a new revised and augmented edition of the Stratioticus, which contained the same Bacon AA headpiece. The 1590 second edition of Stratioticus was printed by Richard Field, who not too long after printed Bacon's two Shakespeare poems dedicated to the Earl of Southampton, Venus and Adonis and the Rape of Lucrece. The revised and augmented second edition of Stratioticus was followed by a second edition of Pantometria, most probably published after consultation with Bacon, that reprints the dedication to his father, Sir Nicholas Bacon, from the first edition. Several orthodox Shakespeare scholars have noticed that Digges' Stratioticus is a source for some of Othello's military material. There is another very important piece of information not recorded in the extensive Bacon biographical canon. At some unknown date, Digges married Anne, daughter of Sir Warham St. Leger, and his wife Ursula, daughter of George Neville, Lord Abergavenny. This means Digges and Bacon were related. Sir Henry Neville was married to Sir Nicholas Bacon's eldest daughter, Elizabeth, Bacon's elder sister, and his son and namesake, the courtier and diplomat Sir Henry Neville, married Anne, daughter of Sir Henry Killigrew, and his wife, Lady Catherine Cook Killigrew, the younger sister of Lady Anne Cook Bacon. During the 1590s, Sir Henry Neville the younger moved in the Bacon-Essex circles in and around Essex House on the Strand. Bacon's nephew, Sir Henry Neville, makes an appearance on the outer cover of Bacon's collection of manuscripts, known as the Northumberland manuscript, which originally held copies of his Shakespeare plays Richard II and Richard III. On the top left-hand side of the outer cover containing its contents, the name Neville can be seen in two places, above the punning motto of the family, Nevile Velis. Perhaps, writes its editor, this gives a clue to the original ownership of the volume, as it seems to indicate that the collection was written for or was the property of some member of the Neville family. If the Northumberland manuscript was at one time or another in the possession of Bacon's nephew, Sir Henry Neville, and other members of the Bacon-Neville family, it might conceivably have been seen by Thomas Digges, who may have been in possession of another copy of the same, which also may have housed manuscript copies of Bacon's Shakespeare plays Richard II and Richard III. The marriage between Thomas Digges and his wife Anne produced 4 surviving children, 2 daughters, Margaret and Ursula, and 2 sons, the politician and diplomat Sir Dudley Digges and his younger brother, the poet and translator Leonard Digges. The original edition of a book named Tectonicon by Leonard Digges, whose special patron was Nicholas Bacon, was reprinted in 1605, where above the address there appears a Baconian-Rosicrucian AA headpiece, confirming that Bacon was behind its publication. For someone so inextricably linked to Shakespeare, or to be more precise, the First Folio and the important 1640 edition of the Shakespeare poems, there is to the present day, as we have seen, very little known about Leonard Digges. His brief entry in the DNB amounts to a single paragraph, and its revised version in the ODNB to less than a single page. As with his brother, we have no information of his early life or education. At the age of 15, he went to University College, Oxford in 1603 and graduated with Bachelor of Arts in October 1606. Having left Oxford, he shortly after travelled abroad for a period of study in foreign universities, which may have included some secret courier work on behalf of Bacon, carrying information and intelligence as well as manuscripts and books to printers and publishers and members of his Rosicrucian Freemasonry Brotherhood. In 1611, it appears Digges went to Spain with his friend James Mabb, Fellow of Magdalen College, Oxford, and Secretary to the English Ambassador Sir John Digby, one of Bacon's close friends and political allies. The evidence for this trip to Spain comes from a copy of a third edition of Lope de Vega's Remas, printed at Madrid in 1613, now housed in the library of Balliol College, Oxford, which Mabb, who also contributed a verse to the First Folio, sent via Digges to another Oxford scholar, William Baker. This is the only information we have of Digges from the time of taking his degree at Oxford in 1606 until 11 years later in 1617, when he issued a verse translation from Claudianus's The Rape of Proserpine, published by Edward Blount, publisher of the Shakespeare First Folio. It is dedicated to his sister Margaret Digges, who had recently nursed him through a dangerous sickness. In 1622, Digges published a translation of a Spanish novel entitled Gerardo, published by Blount, which he dedicated to William Herbert, Earl of Pembroke, Grand Master of England, and Philip Herbert, Earl of Montgomery, the incomparable pair of brethren to whom Bacon dedicated the First Folio. In his dedication, he uses the phrase, though a stranger rather than an intruder. The Earl of Pembroke, Grand Master of England, would have readily understood the enigmatic, though a stranger rather than an intruder. In Freemasonry, a stranger is a person not known to be a Freemason to those outside the Brotherhood, and a cowan or intruder is not a Freemason, and hence unwelcome in a Freemason's lodge. The following year, Bacon dedicated the Shakespeare First Folio, believed by some to be the greatest Freemasonic book in the history of the world, to the most noble and incomparable pair of brethren. To this Freemasonic masterpiece, Leonard Digges contributed the commendatory verse. It will be observed that the first line of the verse contains 39 letters, F. Bacon in simple cipher, and the last line contains 33 letters, Bacon in simple cipher. The verse contains the earliest known reference to the Stratford Moniment, so beloved of orthodox Shakespeare scholars. However, if we examine it more closely, we are able to discern that Digges, who is privy to the secret Bacon is the concealed author of the Shakespeare works, in a Rosicrucian Freemasonic method of delivery hints at the truth. He tells us that his works will outlive this carefully crafted illusion, and when time dissolves thy Stratford Moniment, the hidden truth will be revealed to the world. Or, in Bacon's words, printed on the title page of his Rosicrucian New Atlantis, in time the hidden truth will be revealed. It appears that the Stratford Moniment was erected sometime before 1623. The monument is attached to the north wall of the chancel in Holy Trinity Church, overlooking the presumed grave of William Shakespeare, which bears an epitaph, but remarkably no name. It is somewhat remarkable that 4 centuries later, the whole phalanx of orthodox Shakespeare scholars who have written countless thousands of works on Shakespeare of Stratford have not produced a shred of evidence or shed any light on who was responsible for commissioning the Stratford Monument. Yet, as we shall see, what is in effect a beguiling Rosicrucian-Freemasonic memorial was secretly commissioned by Francis Bacon. On the present-day tablet of the Stratford Monument there is the following engraving. A free translation of the Latin inscription at the head of the monument is given by B. Rowland Lewis. Him who in judgment was a Nestor, in intellect was a Socrates, in art was a Virgil, the earth encloses, the populace mourn, and Olympus holds. In the months following Bacon's recorded death, his private secretary and Rosicrucian brother, Dr. Rawley, compiled and published a commemorative work in his honour entitled The Memory. This rare volume contains 32 Latin verses in praise of Bacon, with an introduction by Dr. Rawley. The orthodox editors and biographers of Bacon have continued to suppress and pass over the contents of this critically important work to the present day. Several of these verses portray Bacon as a secret supreme poet and dramatist of comedies and tragedies written under the pseudonym Shakespeare. There are some remarkable parallels between the Stratford Monument and Bacon's commemorative verses. On the Stratford Monument, a Nestor in judgment. Bacon's Memory verses, for if venerable virtue, if wisdom's wreaths make an ancient, you are older than Nestor. On the Shakespeare Monument, a Marrow in his art, from the verses, O Greeks, give place, Marrow, first in Latin story. On the monument, he resides in Olympus, from the verses, the Verulamian star now glitters in ruddy Olympus. The first line of the English verse beneath it on the Stratford Monument reads, Stay, passenger, why goest thou by so fast? From the Bacon verses we have Stay, traveller, your steps, and again in Elegy 13, Stay your advance and leave to posterity what will delight the coming ages to discover. An early printed reference to the monument at Stratford upon Avon appeared in the first edition of the aptly titled A Banquet of Jests. The only two known copies of this extremely rare 1630 edition are held at the Bodleian Library. No name of an author appears on its title page. Written against the entry number 159 is Stratford upon Avon, the corresponding text of which is given here. One travelling through Stratford upon Avon, a town most remarkable for the birth of famous William Shakespeare, and walking in the church to do his devotion, espied as things there worthy observation, which was a tombstone laid more than 300 years ago, on which was engraven an epitaph to this purpose. I, Thomas, such a one, and Elizabeth my wife, here under lie buried, and no reader I.R.C. and I, Christoph Q, are alive at this hour to witness it. The jest is probably best described as a Rosicrucian ludibrium. It will be noted that the passage signs off with, and no reader I.R.C. and I, Christoph Q, are alive at this hour to witness it. I assume the initials I.R.C. stand for Ben Jonson of the Rosy Cross, with I, Christoph Q being of similar ilk. The jest appears on page 157, Fra Rosy Cross in simple cipher, the numerical seal of the Brothers of the Rosy Cross. If we now look closely at his pseudonym, William Shakespeare, we see above it in the second line the letters O-N, underneath these in the third lines the letters A-B, and below it in the fifth line the letter C, spelling out the name Bacon, conveying the secret cryptographic message that Bacon is Shakespeare. Thus, the carefully constructed cryptogram conveys the secret that the Stratford Monument, placed there by Bacon and his Rosicrucian brotherhood, presenting the illiterate, semi-illiterate William Shakespeare of Stratford as the author of the Shakespeare poems and plays, is a merry jest, a Rosicrucian Freemasonic illusion, all hidden in plain sight. O Lord, such fools these mortals be. A few years after the publication of A Banquet of Jests, Stratford-upon-Avon was visited by another member of the Rosicrucian Freemasonry Brotherhood, the antiquary William Dugdale. It was during this visit in 1634 that he made the first known drawing of the Shakespeare Monument. An engraving of the Shakespeare Monument by Holler, based on the drawing, was first printed in Dugdale's Antiquities of Warwickshire in 1656. Its engraving, Holler had by then enjoyed a long history with Bacon and his Rosicrucian Freemasonry Brotherhood. In Dugdale's Antiquities, which had taken more than 20 years to produce, with its engraving by Holler of the Shakespeare Monument at Stratford, Dugdale concludes his brief comments on Stratford with the following statement. One thing more, in reference to this ancient town is observable, that it gave birth and sepulchre to our late famous poet Will Shakespeare, whose monument I have inserted in my Discourse of the Church. It will be seen that the passage contains a total of 35 words. Of these, 33 are printed in Roman type and 2 in italics. The 2 words printed in italics are Will Shakespeare. Thus, if the pseudonym is removed, it leaves 33 words, 33 Bacon in simple cipher, and 2 times 33 is 66, a double cipher for Bacon, which plus the 1 full word Shakespeare, 66 plus 1 equals 67, Francis in simple cipher. Hundreds of thousands of scholars, students and tourists travel from all around the globe to visit Stratford-upon-Avon and the Shakespeare Monument to pay homage to the greatest poet and dramatist in the history of the world, but are not able to see and comprehend what is hidden in plain sight in front of their own eyes. The full Rosicrucian Freemasonic significance of the Shakespeare Monument at Stratford, which is known to learned members of the Brotherhood, has been concealed, hidden and suppressed for the last 400 years. This systematic silence was recently overturned by Peter Dawkins, founder principal of the Francis Bacon Research Trust, a recognised authority on the Rosicrucian Freemasonry Brotherhood, who, by his own admission, is not a Freemason, in his groundbreaking article, The Symbolism, Mystery and Secret Message of the Shakespeare Monument. It was also addressed by M.R. Osborne in his 112-page work, Allegory in Stone, a short study of the Shakespeare Monument, published in 2022. In contrast to Dawkins, while Osborne, a descendant of the Shakespeare family, was apparently not a Baconian, he is a member of the secretive Societas Rosicruciana in Anglia, whose admission rules require that its members have achieved the rank of Master Mason of a Grand Lodge under the auspices of the Grand Lodge of England. The Shakespeare Monument is replete with Rosicrucian Freemasonry symbolism. There are the 2 putti, a representation of a naked child or cherub, above the monument representing Adam's labour with the trowel, symbolically used to spread brotherly love among humankind, a key tool of modern speculative Freemasonry. The sandstone skull, a profoundly Masonic symbol situated at the top of the monument, reminds us of the Grand Lodge above is never far away. Here on the Shakespeare Monument, the black marble Corinthian columns represent the Freemasonic columns that beautify and adorn Freemasonic lodges all around the world. On his chapter on Rosicrucianism, Osborne reveals that one Rosicrucian secret is that our bodies have a further 6 non-physical forms, concealed by 7 veils. The 7 roses above Shakespeare's head on the monument refer to this Rosicrucian doctrine of the 7 aphorisms or sevenfold soul. The hidden secret of the Shakespeare Monument is that it is in truth a Rosicrucian memorial, and we need only consider the trowel and spear in the monument and the 3 working tools of the poet in the frieze, the quill pen, page and cushion he needed to sit on while working, to recognise the quasi-Freemasonic symbolism. The Shakespeare Monument is a Baconian-Rosicrucian-Freemasonic cryptogram, concealing and revealing its hidden architect and secret author of the Shakespeare poems and plays. It is, as Peter Dawkins points out, a critical gateway into the heart of the mystery of Shakespeare, which when fully revealed has very far-reaching consequences that will demand the rewriting of history and change forever the face of Baconian Shakespearean scholarship. The Dugdale drawing engraving of the Shakespeare Monument appears to have been designed to draw notice to its Masonic significance, for the arms of Shakespeare are shown in a most awkward but stylised way, which immediately draws attention. These arms are disposed such that they portray the geometrical form of the Masonic square and compass, the single most universally identifiable symbol of Freemasonry. The upper arms and head form the compass, i.e. pair or set of compasses. The lower arms and hands are square. To substitute a woolsack for a cushion is of great Baconian-Rosicrucian and Freemasonic significance, because the most famous woolsack is the seat of the Lord Chancellor. Bacon was Lord Chancellor of England, while presiding over the House of Lords. The lions shown crowning the pillars alludes to the lion's paw, the grip used in the third-degree ritual to resurrect or raise up the Freemason from darkness into light. As we now have it, the Shakespeare Monument depicts the purported image of the Stratford man with a blank or vacant expression, not unlike the Droeshout on the First Folio, with a quill pen in his right hand, with his left hand resting upon a single blank sheet of paper on a tessellated cushion. The blank sheet on the monument indicates that the actor William Shakespeare has never written anything in his whole life, no Shakespeare poems or plays, and at the same time throws a sidelight on his lack of education and illiteracy. A tessellated cushion is what we would expect to see, discloses Dawkins, on the seat of a Grand Master of Freemasonry. The cushion on the monument, he observes, is depicted with golden tassels at its four corners and a gold cord around it linking the tassels. In Freemasonry, the lodge floor or carpet, and the tracing board each have a tessellated border consisting of a cord connecting four tassels, one at each of the four corners. The tassels represent the four cardinal virtues: prudence, temperance, fortitude, and justice. The Shakespeare Monument, like the First Folio, which is dedicated to the Grand Master of England, is replete with Baconian-Rosicrucian Freemasonic symbolism, codes and ciphers, which read and deciphered repeatedly reveal and confirm that Bacon is Shakespeare. Dawkins draws his revelatory article to a close by revealing the Baconian ciphers inserted by Bacon in the Stratford Shakespeare Monument. The large 8 lines of text on the inscription of the Shakespeare Monument contains a total of 287 letters, 287 Fra Rosicross in case cipher. The bottom 2 lines of the inscription comprises 6 words, and the numbers total 27, 6 and 27, 33 Bacon in simple cipher. The Latin inscription contains 72 letters, 52 words, and the bottom section 6 words, and the numbers all total up to 157 Fra Rosicross in simple cipher. These are the cipher seals of the Rosicrucian Brotherhood, which are also found in the prefatory pages of the Shakespeare First Folio. Fra Rosicross stands for Fratus Rosicross, Brothers of the Rosy Cross, or alternatively, as intimated by the Rosicrucian brother, Dr. John Wilkins, who was the first secretary of the Baconian-Rosicrucian Royal Society, it also stands for Francis Rosicross. In his Mathematical Magic in 1648, Dr. Wilkins makes the following remarkable disclosure. Such a lamp is likewise related to be seen in the sepulchre of Francis Rosicross, as is more largely expressed in the confession of that fraternity. The passage contains a deliberate error, a device used by the Rosicrucian Brotherhood when disclosing a secret about Francis Bacon. The sepulchre with the lamp in its vault is described not in the Confessio Fraternitatis, but in the preceding First Rosicrucian Manifesto, the Fama, with the passage cryptically indicating that Francis Bacon, Francis Rosy-Cross, was the secret founder of the Rosicrucian Brotherhood and secret author of its 2 manifestos. A few feet below the Shakespeare Monument stands the presumed gravestone of William Shakespeare of Stratford, which bears its famous epitaph. The inscription contains 106 letters and 3 symbols, with each symbol comprising 2 letters, one placed directly above the other. If we count the symbols as 6 and deduct them from the letters, 106 minus 6 equals 100. It yields Francis Bacon in simple cipher. And in like manner, if we count the symbols as 3, 106 minus 3 equals 103. It yields Shakespeare in simple cipher, once more revealing and confirming that Francis Bacon is Shakespeare. In his poem prefixed to the Shakespeare First Folio, Bacon's inward friend and Rosicrucian Freemasonry brother Leonard Digges made the first known printed reference to the Stratford Shakespeare Monument, wherein he tells us that when time dissolves thy Stratford Monument, the hidden truth will finally be revealed to the world. In other words, as stated around the title page of New Atlantis, in time the hidden truth will be revealed, namely that Francis Bacon is our secret Shakespeare.